Depression may be affecting your gut more than most people realize, and your gut may be affecting depression right back. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why that one hidden loop can make good treatment feel almost completely random. A lot of people still think of depression as mood only. Low mood, low motivation, low pleasure, low energy. But depression often changes the body too. It can change appetite. It can slow digestion. It can disrupt bowel rhythm. So if you've been treating depression like mood only, you may have been missing the part that keeps pulling you back down. And in some people, it shows up with constipation, diarrhea, bloating, nausea, reflux, or a gut that just never feels stable anymore. So this video is about one thing only: how depression can change bowel function, and how bowel dysfunction may then keep feeding depression back. And once you see the 4 bowel patterns behind that loop, a lot of failed treatments start making perfect sense. Because if you miss that loop, treatment can start feeling random, and that is where a lot of people get stuck. Most people only hear one half of the story. They hear that gut problems can affect mood. That part is real, but the other half matters too. Depression itself can affect the bowel. In clinical herbal teaching, depression is not described only with emotional symptoms. It also shows up with appetite changes, digestive disturbance, diarrhea or constipation, fatigue, and low energy. That matters. Because once depression starts changing appetite, digestion, and bowel rhythm, the gut is no longer just along for the ride. It becomes part of the actual picture. And then the second half begins. A bowel that stays backed up, inflamed, unstable, irritated, or microbiome disrupted may start pushing back on the same low, heavy shutdown state. That is the loop. And that is the loop most people miss. This does not mean every case of depression starts in the gut. But when low mood keeps showing up with constipation, diarrhea, bloating, nausea, reflux, food reactivity, or an unstable stool pattern, treating the mood and ignoring the bowel is usually too small of a map. So the better question is not, what is the best herb for depression? The better question is, what is happening in the bowel while the depression is happening? Because the bowel pattern changes the strategy, and for this video, I want to keep that map simple. Because from this point on, you'll see why the same depression can need 4 completely different gut strategies. There are 4 bowel pictures I care about most in depression: the slow and backed up pattern, the unstable bowel pattern, the inflamed upper gut pattern, and the fragile microbiome pattern. Let's start with the first one. The slow and backed up pattern. This is the person whose depression feels heavy in the body. Low drive, brain fog, heaviness after meals, constipation, low appetite or delayed appetite, a gut that feels sluggish, a body that feels dim. This matters because once the bowel slows down enough, the emotional heaviness and the physical heaviness start blending together. Food sits longer. The abdomen feels full. The person feels dull after eating. Movement feels harder. And the whole depression picture starts feeling thicker. This is where people often make the first big mistake. They keep looking only for mood support while the bowel keeps slowing things down every day. In this picture, digestive activation may matter much more than people expect. Your digestive material describes bitters as increasing saliva, stomach acid, pancreatic enzymes, gut motility, bile flow, and liver activity, and it explicitly lists them for constipation and for improving appetite, digestion, and intestinal peristalsis. That is why this pattern is not just about mood, it is also about movement, and this is where herbs like gentian, artichoke, dandelion, turmeric, and sometimes verbena or bacopa can start making more sense. Not because they are magic, because they match the bowel picture better. And some of those herbs matter here for another reason too. They bridge both sides. Verbena is one of them. Bacopa is another. They do not only speak to mood, they also speak to digestion. But the next pattern is where people get fooled the most, because it changes just enough to make every fix look wrong. Now the second picture is different, the unstable bowel pattern. This is when the person says, one day I feel backed up, another day I feel urgency. The stool pattern keeps changing. The bowel never feels predictable. My stomach is never really normal anymore. This one wears people down in a different way, not through heaviness only, through inconsistency. Through inconsistency. The body stops feeling regular, the gut stops feeling trustworthy, and the person starts reacting to the gut all day long. Your IBS material already describes that picture. Irregular motility, alternating diarrhea and constipation, bloating, nausea, fatigue, and emotional symptoms, including depression. This is also where random gut fixes fail the hardest. Random probiotic, random digestive support, random tea, random supplement. Because the person is reacting to whatever showed up today instead of reading the rhythm underneath it. And if the rhythm is unstable, symptom chasing usually loses. And this next pattern is the one people keep missing because it doesn't feel like a bowel issue first, until it starts dragging the whole mood picture down. Now, as I mentioned, the next picture is completely different. The inflamed upper gut pattern. Burning, reflux, nausea, gastritis-type discomfort, food reactivity, early fullness, a gut that feels irritated all the time. This is not mainly a movement problem, it is an irritation problem, and that changes the strategy. Here the job is not to push harder, it is to soothe, protect, and repair. That is where soothing herbs make much more sense. Marshmallow, licorice, meadowsweet when upper GI acid and irritation are stronger. And this is where hericium becomes much more interesting than most people realize. Not only because people frame it as a brain mushroom, but because in your mushroom material it also shows up around gastritis, ulcers, helicobacter, and prebiotic support. That is a much more useful way to think about it here. Not brain mushroom, a mushroom that may matter when depression is traveling with an irritated upper gut. But the last pattern is the one that makes smart probiotics, smart herbs, and smart mushrooms feel the most random of all. And then comes the fourth picture, the fragile microbiome pattern. This is when the story sounds like this. Antibiotics changed everything. Infections changed everything. Sleep loss changes digestion. One food is fine today and awful tomorrow. One food is fine today and awful tomorrow. The stool pattern is inconsistent. The gut feels physically less resilient than it used to. This is not just sensitive digestion. This is often a terrain problem. And this is exactly where people often make the next big mistake. They keep trying to hit the gut harder. More killing, more cleansing, more force, when sometimes the actual job is rebuilding. That is where Trametes becomes especially relevant in your sources, because it is linked there to higher lactobacillus and bifidobacterium, lower gut pathogens, pH balance, and renewal of gut cells. That is not random symptom support, that is terrain support. And once you hear the next question, you'll see why most people never really map this problem correctly. So now the real question becomes clear. Not, what is the best herb for depression? But, what is the bowel doing while the depression is happening? Is it slow and backed up? Is it unstable? Is it inflamed and irritated? Is it microbiome fragile? Is it microbiome fragile? Because if you can answer that one question correctly, the whole treatment strategy changes immediately. Because once that becomes clear, the choices stop feeling random. Slow and backed up tends to need motility, bile, appetite, and digestive activation. Unstable bowel rhythm tends to need regulation, not symptom chasing. Inflamed upper gut patterns tend to need soothing and repair. Fragile microbiome patterns tend to need rebuilding and terrain support. And most of the time, the best results do not come from one tool. They come from matching the tool to the bowel pattern traveling with the depression. So no, depression is not just in your head. And no, every gut symptom automatically causes depression. But when depressive symptoms and bowel changes keep showing up together, you are usually looking at a two-way loop. Depression can change appetite, digestion, and bowel rhythm. And bowel dysfunction can push back through inflammation, microbiome shifts, gut-brain signaling, and the daily physical burden of an unstable gut. That is the frame. Match the herb to the bowel pattern. Match the mushroom to the terrain. And treat both sides of the loop. If this finally made the gut depression link make sense, subscribe. Because this is exactly what I do here. Turn confusing symptoms into clear herbal strategy. And the more precisely you see the pattern, the less random healing starts to feel.
The herbalist